It now brings us to question period, and this being the second Friday in the month, which is on our calendar for the Premier's questions. We'll start this period with Premier's questions this morning. And, Mr. Premier, we have members who have submitted questions that I'd like to put for you this morning. And we will start. As you know, this is 30 minutes for the Premier's questions, and then we have 30 minutes for the rest of the questions. So starting now, we'll take our first question. It's in the name of the opposition leader. The opposition leader has 3 questions and 2 supplements, and every other member would have 1 question and 2 supplements.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you would indulge me, I just want to ask of yourself, since this has been irregular, this Premier's question period, and it's the first time we've had it in months, is it to be expected in the foreseeable future?
You asking a question to me or to the Premier?
Well, I'm just looking at, no, I'm asking you, I said, please indulge me. This is the first time we've had Premier's questions for several months now. Is it going to be the practice going forward that we stick to a schedule on a monthly basis that we will have Premier's questions?
Well, the standing orders indicates that the Premier's questions will fall whenever we sit on the second Friday of any given month. So if we're in Parliament on the second Friday, there will be Premier's questions prior to standing order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I heard everything you didn't say. Thank you.
No problem. Now put your question.
Yes. So, Mr. Speaker, the Premier back some time ago mentioned that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he felt that the passport situation for Bermudians was a relatively easy fix, and I'm paraphrasing as I recall the conversation. We're continuing to get more and more reports of Bermudians having difficulty traveling from one country to another jurisdiction and trying to connect to Bermuda. What I would like to know is where are we with this particular situation and relieving the stress that many of our Bermudians who love to travel are having going from one country to the next.
Premier?
Good morning to you, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honorable Opposition Leader for his question. I also want to make sure that it is reminded to all persons that the change which happened in our passports did not happen under this government. It happened under the former government, who was consulted but did not realize that if the code was changed, it would cause problems for our particular travelers. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding, I hear not true, Mr. Speaker, but the fact is that it was changed, and we did not hear anything from the other side in warnings, etc., until after people started complaining about the changes, which was approved by their particular government.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
Yes, just for clarity, the Honourable Premier is misleading the House inasmuch as there was no consultation that indicated that the change to the BMU, change from BMU to GBD was going to negatively impact. That was never advised to the Immigration Department prior to the change of the printing of the passports from the HMPO to the HMPO from the Bermuda Immigration Department. There was no indication.
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I'm going to say is that I'm going to answer the question which the opposition leader asked, but I want to make sure that the persons have context into this particular situation. Mm-hmm. This was raised in 2017 at my first visit to the United Kingdom. It was also raised at the JMC meeting in 2018. And where, as I've given previously in this House, that I was unsatisfied as the answers of which we got, which left our persons in a legal no man's land, unable to apply for an ESTA because we cannot get one, yet unable to enter in certain ports of entry. At that point in time, the Minister for the Overseas Territories undertook to investigate the particular issue. The London office, in addition to him, traveled to Berlin to the ICAO meeting in May of 2019, and where it was ruled that we could have our own particular code. Those matters were progressing at a technical level with Her Majesty's Passport Office under the Ministry of Home Affairs inside of the United Kingdom. What has happened, Mr. Speaker, is that the United Kingdom, well, there's 2 things. Number one, they have now written to us and said that after saying for the longest while that we cannot have our own code, have now said that we can get our own code back. The challenge is that this was taken away from us without our permission, and they're asking us to pay approximately $1 million for the privilege of returning it back to Bermuda. This is not something, well, I'm happy that the opposition is saying hell no, because I believe the exact same thing. The Minister of National Security had meetings on this particular matter when he was in London in November, was it, Minister? And at that point in time, there was a hold that was placed until, because there was an election, that things were going on, and to wait until after the results of the election. The results are finished, then we're advised to wait until after Brexit. Brexit was a couple of weeks ago. We are continuing to press this issue, and we're expecting that it will be resolved. We have figures that have come from Her Majesty's Passport Office. We've gone back through Government House and through the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, questioning those figures, which are inside of this year's budget, and we're expecting that this matter will be resolved soon. I'm happy that the Honorable Opposition Leader asked the question, and I'm happy to update the public on this particular matter. What I am advising persons is, and from our perspective, is that this is an active brief. We will not, I do not believe that it is right that this Honorable House appropriate money to pay to get something reverted back that we had no choice in losing in the first place.
Thank you, Premier. Supplementary?
Yes, supplementary, Mr. Speaker. I guess listening to the Premier, and I'm just looking for information to give back to the public. When did they receive this written notice, including that we must pay this, that we needed to pay this $1 million? And in addition to that, why at that time did we not have a statement maybe bringing us up to date to this fact? And we've waited now till we have Premier's question period for us to bring it up to ask.
Premier?
I have been advised by the Minister of National Security that a statement was made. But I guess what the question that the Honorable Opposition Leader is asking is, why did we not tell the public that $1 million has been asked from us? The fact is that not every conversation that is disclosed between the UK government and us is publicly disclosed. We have our particular position, and we have pushed back on that particular position very vociferously, and we are waiting for the response. As I informed the Honorable Opposition Leader in the previous questions, at the point in time of which the Minister was over there and engaged, there was an election which was called. They said to wait until after the election. We re-engaged. They said the departments will focus on the issues of which are arising out of Brexit and the transition to ask for us to re-engage after Brexit took place. Brexit took place a couple of weeks ago. This is a matter that we are continuing to engage on, and it is my hope that we will have final resolution by the time of the Joint Ministerial Council meeting, which is going to take place at the end of March, which was delayed due to the United Kingdom election. What I can say, however, is the transition will take a while. I'm not certain that it will be immediate, but I'm hopeful that it'll be able to resolve prior to the end of this year. We will, however, hold firm on our position, and I'm grateful for the members of the opposition in their support that we do not believe that Bermuda taxpayer dollars should be made to pay for something that we had no choice in losing in the first place.
Thank you. Second question?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, supplementary.
Supplementary,
Yes,
okay.
yes. Bearing what the Premier has said, just as for clarification, are we negotiating, although he does not believe that Bermuda taxpayers' money should go towards this change, are we negotiating the $1 million price that they have put on there? Is that part of the negotiation, or have we just simply turned it down?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, our negotiating position is we do not believe that we should be forced to pay for something that was not our choice in the first place of getting rid of. That is the position of which we have taken. We have gone back for justifications on the figures. As someone who has a background in IT, I cannot possibly imagine the changing of 3 letters costing $1 million.
Thank you. Further question? Oh, you're fine? Second question, yes.
Second question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for those answers. I think it was, quite frankly, informative at this point in time as we continue to have the challenges with traveling. So I will thank the Premier for those answers. My second question, Mr. Speaker, is considering part of what we just discussed involving Brexit and this causing unintended consequences to get some answers to some of the challenges we're having as an island, dependent territory in traveling. In addition to that, I know that the Premier had put together a Brexit committee. I'm not sure if we call it a committee, board, whatever it was. I know that we had put together a team, and we were asked for an appointment. We made an appointment. Has the committee had any official meetings to date?
Premier?
I thank the honorable opposition leader for his question. The answer to his question is no, the committee has not had any official meetings to this date. I will wait for the supplementary to elaborate if he wishes.
Yeah, considering the challenges again of as we see things progressing as far as Brexit is concerned, and having to now, actually today we've got a bill before us. Why not? Why? Because the Premier in his statement did say that it was important to get moving, understanding that it was a challenge concerning Brexit, the European Union, and the likes. Why not? Why haven't we met?
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that, of course, we will remember that our late member was slated to chair that particular commission. I have deciding, and I have indicated to my cabinet colleagues that I will have a member to sit as chair of that committee on by the end of this month. What has also been a challenge is that members of the business community have not yet given their representative to this particular group as well, and we've gone back to them. Remember, there was a number of persons. So yes, the opposition has put a member on there. We have gone back out to ask members of the business community. There was one seat for the business community. The business community wanted 2 seats, one for international business, one for local business. We went back and we said, no, you have to agree on 1 seat for the business community as was laid out. And just for members' information again, it was a member of the Trade Union Congress, a member from the Progressive Labor Party, a member from the One Bermuda Alliance, a member from the business community, a member from the non-profit sector, and a youth member on the committee, as was outlined in my statement, which I gave last year. Yeah. Those members have been requested. My office has sent follow-up requests and a following follow-up request. I raised the matter when I met with our quarterly meeting with Bermuda Chamber of Commerce, and I will continue to raise the matter so that the business community can give me their final appointment so that the committee can be fully impaneled and commence their meetings next month.
Thank you. Supplementary, yes?
Yeah, supplementary, second supplementary to that. Notwithstanding, now that we've been given some clarification to those who are members of the this particular Brexit committee, and the answer that he's just given, has he communicated at all with any of the members of some of this challenge in getting the Brexit committee officially started?
Premier?
No.
Okay. All right. No further question? Third question?
I get a third supplementary, yeah?
Yeah, you actually
I had
supplements.
2? Okay.
Right, yeah.
All right, I was trying to steal one, I guess. Yes, and my third question, Mr. Speaker, is I'd like to know, notwithstanding the answers that we were given by the Honourable Member Lupita Fogo last week concerning project for National Sports Center, to date, as we move forward in time, to date, has any contract or agreement been made or signed for any energy project at National Sports Center?
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No.
Supplementary?
Yes, supplementary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Premier then give us a status or update on any potential projects for the National Sports Center, considering this our request had gone out, I guess it's been over maybe a year. Do we have an update as to the status on where government plans on moving with this project?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, as this is a matter which falls underneath the Minister for Labor, Community Affairs, and Sports, so I do not believe it's in the chamber. I do not have specific information on that. What I do know is that I believe that this is a negotiated settlement. There was not particularly a bid itself that was specified, so it was negotiated. The opposition leader and former Minister of Public Works, I'm sure, is aware how negotiated processes work. I'm sure there are ongoing negotiations regarding the financing options. But what I would say is that it's something that we feel is particularly important for the National Sports Center. As we know, the National Sports Center has energy needs, and anything that we can do to make sure that we have greener energy and better energy use, which will save the taxpayers of this country money, is something that is beneficial. And I'm certain that as per public access to information requirements, that if there is or when there is a contract signed or when the process moves forward, members of the public will be aware. But the Honorable Opposition Leader is welcome to continue to ask questions when we come every week.
Second supplementary.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Second supplementary. Is it true that the Premier agreed to move forward, Premier, with the previous said project if the former chairman agreed to resign of BLP?
Premier?
No.
Okay. Thank you. The second, that brings you your 3 questions. The Deputy Opposition Leader, you have indicated your questions? Yes, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are, and many of us have been concerned about the coronavirus and its impact and its continuing impact around the world. In light of the global fear of the coronavirus, I'd like to know how the government allowed the overseas media outlet make an announcement that Royal Caribbean was coming here before the government did, and how they did not get ahead of it.
Premier?
I'm not entirely certain the question that the Honorable Deputy Opposition Leader would like me to answer.
Would you like to restate your question?
My question is, why did the government not make an announcement prior to Royal Caribbean or its media outlet make the announcement that the ship was coming here in the interest of the public and because of the fear that is generated, that has been generated by the coronavirus?
Mr. Speaker, I think that announcements for ships that are being made are made in the normal course of work. I cannot necessarily state as to why there was probably more attention. There are ships that are diverted and change schedules all the time, and the government does not always announce that at the immediate points in time. I recognize the fear that came because of the reporting overseas of the fact that it was assumed or thought that persons had the virus on a previous sailing of the ship. There was no persons found with the virus on the previous sailing of the ship, following extensive tests, not only from local health authorities in New Jersey, but also the Centers for Disease Control, which is able to go ahead and get the genetic antibodies and to make sure that they can run conclusive tests on these particular matters. So the only thing which I will say, Mr. Speaker, is that we became aware of the hype and speculation around this, and the government put out the information so the public could be aware precisely of what was happening. But, Mr. Speaker, we have to understand that if we are a tourism destination, we are a tourism destination. It is key to note that when cruise ships ask to come to the country, if we have birthing docks that are available, it is not something that necessarily comes up to the cabinet or to ministers. It's something that said, sure, we have birthing docks available, it's okay. When we found out that there were other particular issues, we made sure we put out the information and statements accordingly.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Supplementary. So when did Royal Caribbean ask, and when was approval granted for them to come to Bermuda?
Mr. Speaker, I do not have those specific questions. I'm happy to try to get the answers for the honorable member, and I'm sure that the honorable member would have had an opportunity to ask those questions directly to the Minister of Tourism and Transport if she would have taken up his offer to join him on the ship as it came in on Wednesday morning.
Thank you. Second supplementary?
Thank you. Second supplemental. Was the Center for Disease Control engaged at any time to provide us with comfort? My understanding was that the governor of New Jersey put out a tweet that there wasn't an issue, but did we contact the Center for Disease Control?
Mr. Speaker, there are constant contacts between the public health authorities in Bermuda and overseas health authorities in Bermuda, Mr. Speaker. The fact is that if there was coronavirus that was found on the ship or persons carrying it, it would have actually been a public health emergency in the United States. There was none. I think that it is quite interesting and slightly irresponsible of the opposition to continue to try to stoke these fears of hysteria when the fact is that nobody on the boat ever had the virus. We have to recognize and understand, Mr. Speaker. I hear chatter about communication. At the point in time when it was found out that there was a particular issue, the government put out statements and made sure that everything was clarified inside of the public. I am not entirely certain what's more, Mr. Speaker, the opposition is asking, but if they want to ask further questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. The member from 19, constituency 19, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, a member's trying to put a question. I need to hear the question. I need to hear the question, member.
Mr. Speaker.
Member?
The people of Bermuda were led to believe that Arbitrade would be a company to launch cryptocurrency exchange and a coin company in Bermuda that would train Bermudians and create 400 jobs in Bermuda. And Victoria Hall was purchased to be its home base. To date, there have been no jobs announced and the building remains empty. As this seemed to be a great opportunity, I'd like the Premier to indicate what went wrong and why has this not occurred.
Mr. Speaker, I just have a question of point of order because I understand that in my conversation with the Deputy Speaker this morning that members on both sides of the House will be able to ask a question, and I'm certain that some of our members might rise to a point of order on that. What I can say to an answer to the honourable member's question is I do not believe that company was successful in getting a license from the Bermuda Monetary Authority.
Supplementary?
My supplementary, the Arbitrade website is not working. I just wondered whether the two main founders, Troy Richard James Hogg and James Goldberg, have launched their business elsewhere or done nothing at all.
Mr. Speaker, I know that questions are to things under my official capacity, and I cannot answer that question as that is not something under my official capacity.
I'll go to a supplementary then. As the Premier has indicated that the company did not get a license, is he able to indicate the reason why they failed the hurdle of getting a license?
Mr. Speaker, I know that the honourable member has worked in international business and will know that there are firewalls between the Bermuda Monetary Authority as an independent regulator of the government. They do not disclose whether or not. All I can tell you is that the company name does not have a license issued under the Bermuda Monetary Authority.
Thank you, Premier. The honourable member Dunkley is next on the list.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
I've called the honourable member Dunkley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm rising on a point of privilege.
Happy
If
Valentine's.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
as the National Security Minister says, if it please you.
Yes, if it
Yeah.
please me, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very grateful. So, Mr. Speaker, can I be absolutely blunt?
Go ahead and be
I've
blunt.
actually been tasked with anticipating a point of privilege this morning on this question of
Well, let me say where you're going. Have a seat, have a seat, have a seat, have a seat. I understand where you're going. Just a few months ago, we had a workshop at Castle Harbor, Talkers Point, if you recall. This was part of the discussions that came up when we had the visiting. Can you stop the clock? Can we start it again afterwards? That's the question. I think so. I don't want to lose the time. If all can go back to that discussion, that workshop, the presenters who came in there spoke to certain topics. One of the topics that came up was the ability for the opposition to be able to put their question, because all the opposition has is their say. Government has its way. When the conversation around this, and I believe the speaker from Malta and the clerk from Trinidad both spoke to this. So they spoke to the fact that Premier's questions was used as an opportunity for the opposition to put their questions. Backbenchers and others can speak when there's time left. That's the normal practice. If we want to stick to what's normal practice, and we have chosen to stick to what that normal practice has been. It's no alter to that. We will have this question. I have had the clerk, since this question has come up again, further concur with others, and that's what's come back. If you want us to revisit this isn't the floor to revisit it. We'll revisit it in another space and another time. But right now, we're following what was put to us as how we established it. And those who are in that room, I ask you to revisit the conversation when the conversation came up, because it was discussed around that table. Thank you. And,
Mr. Speaker, I was saying thank you for that.
well, I did say that. I did say that if we want to revisit it, we're not going to revisit it here now. We revisit it in another space.
Yeah, but Mr.
And I'm asking you to adhere to that. This isn't the time and place for this conversation.
Mr. Speaker, I hear, Mr. Speaker, what you're saying, but this, I must say, is on a point of privilege. And can I just respond to Mr. Speaker to say, the Tucker's Point discussions never convened into a matter of privileges committee, both opining and deciding bipartisanly on this point. This is the first time I've heard about it, even though I was present.
We can provide you with,
No, I remember
with
it.
information from that
Yes.
if memories missed it. But I'm saying to you right now, let's not have this discussion at this time. We can take it up in an appropriate place outside of here at another time. And I'm asking for your indulgence on that.
Mr. Speaker, you don't need my indulgence. I always
Okay.
seek your indulgence, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I respect that you're a member of Parliament in here as well, and I'm asking you to
With-
respect the fact that
Yes.
we're saying let's move on to this and we'll discuss it in another forum. Okay?
Mr. Speaker, I only say that I'm not only a member of Parliament,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a member with privileges under our Constitution, which indicates that.
So,
respect-
Mr. Scott, honourable member, could you just take your seat a minute, please. I've tried to be accommodating on this matter. I got up and explained the process of what we were following. If there's a problem with that, I'm open to saying we will discuss it in another forum and find out a better way, if you feel there's a better way that we want to do it. Trying to bring it here right now isn't going to resolve it. You can stand on your feet 10 different times, and it's not going to resolve it here at this moment, this morning. But I'm open. I'm very much open. I'm offering an opportunity for us to address it in another setting. And I'm asking you to consider the offer that's being given to you, and we'll address it in another setting.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to, obviously, I'm going to respect your ruling. I'm also going to look at the party leader and premier of this country, who has, all of us have been concerned about there having balance in the House. Balance. Mr. Speaker, you see what's going on in D.C. about how there is such friction between the parties. We actually achieve balance by sharing the opportunity for members to put questions. And that's all I was wanting to say to you. I know that is a goal that, that, Mr. Speaker, you share.
Mr. Scott, is your intent to try and get me to change now? Because if it is, stay in
Yes.
your seat. I've already given you an opportunity where we can have a change, where we can talk to this. I've given you that. I've offered you that. I haven't shut this down, which I could do, but I haven't. I've said, I've taken your concern. I understand your concern. We'll provide a forum where we can discuss this and come to a workable solution. It will not happen right now. It will not happen. I can't be any clearer than that. The next name that's on the list, will you, wherever it is, speak?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Happy Valentine's Day. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Premier, I believe, was the first individual as the Minister of Finance to grant a license to arbitrate in the purchase of Victoria Hall. Since that time, can the Honourable Premier inform us if arbitrate or any affiliated companies have been granted licenses by the government or the BMA to conduct any type of business in Bermuda?
I don't believe the answer is yes.
Can I just be clear? I don't believe the answer is yes, or the answer is no.
To the best of my knowledge, Mr. Speaker, I do not know, but I'm not aware of what other associated companies someone may have, etc. What I do know is that Arbitrate has not been granted a license by the Bermuda Monetary Authority to conduct digital asset businesses in Bermuda.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I
Supplementary?
No, just to be clear, so the government hasn't granted any additional licenses other than the purchase.
Premier
of
said, to the best of his knowledge, the answer is he's not aware.
Okay, thank you. Just to be
Best,
clear.
am I interpreting that correct, Premier?
The Premier is normally very clear, but that answer seemed to be a little bit hesitant. Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary.
Is the land tax current on Victoria Hall? Land tax payments?
I'm uncertain, Mr. Speaker, but I'm happy to ask the Minister of Finance to get back to the member.
Thank you. That'd be most appreciated.
Second supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. To date, to the Honorable Minister Premier, has any money been paid into the FinTech Development Fund? If so, how much, and has it been used?
To date, Mr. Speaker, there has been no money paid to the FinTech Development Fund. However, we do have commitments that have been made by companies in Bermuda, which have been recently approved to operate, and we'll be making those announcements in the near future. Those persons have asked for us to wait for the time, but I received a commitment for $100,000 to be given to that fund on Monday.
Thank you. The next member on the list is the member from constituency 8.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have been doing a lot of work for the OECD, and we also know that the OECD and the BEPS committee, which is the Base Erosion Profit Sharing Committee, has targeted the overseas territories with low tax or no tax jurisdictions. My question to the Premier is, has he had any pressure from the OECD or the PEP committee for us to consider harmonizing our tax structure and changing our tax structure here in Bermuda?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member will note, that is a process which has continued to be engaged through the Ministry of Finance. I'm sure that he is aware of the process of which is ongoing. The inclusive framework and the committee that deals with base erosion and profit shifting includes Bermuda and 114 other countries, I think, or 113 other countries, and those processes are ongoing. And when there are final decisions and or updates or actual consultation which needs to happen, we'll be updating honourable members in due course.
Supplementary?
Supplementary. Can the Premier provide us with a comment in regards to their endeavor to encourage Bermuda to adopt income taxes?
I'm not entirely certain the question that the honourable member is trying to get me to answer.
Would you like to restate your question?
Okay. Has the BEP committee met with government representatives to encourage them to introduce income taxes, to encourage Bermuda to introduce income taxes, so that there's more harmonization across the territories and the OECD members?
To the best of my knowledge, there haven't been any meetings from the BEPS committee with officials of the government of Bermuda, because that's not how the committee works. The inclusive framework is a group of 114 countries, I believe. They discuss these particular matters. They go through various consultative process to arrive at items. We know that there are two particular matters which are pending before that, Mr. Speaker, in two different pillars, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, dealing with digital taxation, dealing with other taxes around the world. Those are things in which the government will continue to engage in, as we have engaged over the years.
Okay, supplemental, based on what he just said. So where does the government stand in regards to setting the framework for digital taxation?
I think that when it comes to setting the framework for digital taxation, Mr. Speaker, I think that the government adopts the position that we've always adopted, that tax competition is not bad as long as it is not unfair. We apply and observe all the current rules, and I think that it has been seen that we continue to observe all those current rules. And so if those rules do change, then we will change with them. But I think it's important to note that some of the pressure in which they talk about with large companies, those are things which were abolished by BEPS 5 years ago and which are now coming into effect. So these rules are constantly changing and evolving, and Bermuda plays by those particular rules.
You had your two supplementaries.
Second question.
No, you got one question. One question. One
Okay,
question.
my question is,
No, you put your question. You're finished. You're finished. You're finished. The member from constituent 23.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the Premier could be good enough to advise this Honorable House the basis on which the government determined that $330 million was the appropriate amount to give a block grant to BHB, given that the BHB has failed to provide audited statements for the last 5 years.
Mr. Speaker, that was a discussion between the BHB and the Ministry of Health in talking about the fact of how we're going to finance our health care in this particular country.
Thank you, Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I rise at this point in time under Standing Order 13 on a question of privilege.
Thank you, Premier, for that. Let's move on to the other question period, and then we can finish
Mr.
up.
Speaker, I rise at this point in time under Standing Order 13 on a question of privilege.
Premier.
Can I please act, Mr. Speaker, I'm just asking that my question on privilege be heard.
Yeah, put your question there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, according to Standing Order 13, speaking about privileges and rights in the House, and it states that any member proposing to raise a point of privilege that is arising out of the rec sitting shall state their point of privilege clearly. Mr. Speaker, the point of privilege of which I have to make at this point in time is that it is my understanding and recollection from the Committee on Rules and Privileges when we established these particular Premier's question time that it was stated that we would go from side to side. I recognize that there has been a different decision that has been taken by you, Mr. Speaker. I do not recall that discussion being taken inside of Rules and Privileges, and therefore, under Standing Order 13.3b, that I move that this particular matter be referred to the Rules and Privileges Committees forthwith for ruling to come back to this House.
Mr. Premier, have your seat. I did speak to your member just now and said that I was prepared to make sure we take this to the right forum to have it addressed and fixed. Where else do I take it? But to the rules and but to the standing orders to be fixed. That was a conversation you just said. That was what the offer was put on the table. Let's take it and get it fixed so it works right for this Parliament. That was what that's the offer that was put on the table. There's no other place to take it other than that there. So you've got my consent already that we will take it to the right place and have it fixed.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, as has happened in this House on previous occasions when we've asked for things to be set down in writing, they have not been recorded. Therefore, I'm asking for a motion of privileges, and I'm asking that it be officially recorded in the minutes that this matter will be referred to the Rules and Privileges Committee.
I stood on my feet only a few minutes ago, and I gave a commitment that this will go to the right place so we can get it fixed to how we want it to work for our Parliament.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. I'm asking that according to Standing Order 13.3, that this particular matter, as we have discussed, and the point of privilege of which I'm raising at this time, be referred to the Rules and Privileges Committee. And I'm asking that the minutes reflect that so that it can be official and that we consider a report when it comes back to this House, Mr. Speaker. I understand what you're saying. I'm asking for the motion to be officially reflected in the minutes, Mr. Speaker.
It's been done. The offer was put on the table 5 minutes ago. That if we feel that it isn't the right fix or mix for this Parliament, we'll take it to where it needs to be fixed, and it'll get fixed. It's not for me to fix on this law. Mr. Premier, we didn't need to go back and forth.
Mr. Speaker, I'm saying I thank you for your indulgence. Thank you.
Thank you.